This story explores themes of unexplained phenomena, psychological suspense, and urban mysteries. Listener discretion is advised. The rhythmic clatter and hum of the Crimson Line subway train had become a lullaby of urban fatigue for David Miller. It was past midnight and the city's pulse, usually a frantic drumbeat, had slowed to a weary thrum. David, a software engineer whose days often bled into nights, found himself in this familiar limbo, one of the last stragglers on the southbound train, heading towards the end of the line. He just wanted to get home to his cramped apartment, peel off his work clothes, and forget the endless lines of code that still swam behind his eyelids. The carriage was nearly empty. A young couple, heads resting on each other's shoulders, were fast asleep, their destination long since passed if their slumped posture was any indication. Across from David, an old man with a neatly trimmed white beard stared blankly at his reflection in the darkened window, a plastic grocery bag clutched in his lap. And then there was Mrs. Albright. Mrs. Albright was a fixture of the late-night Crimson Line. David had been seeing her for months, always on this particular route, always at this hour. She was a small woman, probably in her late 70s, with silver hair meticulously pinned back and a faded floral scarf always tied loosely around her neck. She carried a worn leather satchel, and without fail, she would be engrossed in the same book. A thick, leather-bound volume with no discernible title, its pages yellowed with age. She never looked up, never acknowledged anyone, just turned the pages with a slow, deliberate grace, occasionally muttering to herself in a voice too soft to decipher. David often wondered where she came from, or where she was going at such an ungodly hour. He'd even, on a few occasions, seen her get on the train going in the opposite direction at the same time just as he was heading home. A glitch in the matrix, he'd always thought, or maybe she just rode the line back and forth, finding comfort in its predictable motion. Tonight, however, felt different. As the train rumbled past the brightly lit downtown stations, the stops became fewer, the intervals between them longer, and the silence within the carriage grew heavier. The couple had finally stirred, disembarking at the penultimate stop, leaving only David, the old man, and Mrs. Albright. The air hung thick with anticipation, the kind that settles in before an important decision or a looming storm. David felt an inexplicable prickle on the back of his neck. Then came the announcement, a distorted voice crackling through the speakers. Next stop, Blackwood Station. Last stop on the Crimson Line. All passengers must exit the train. Blackwood Station. The name itself felt like a whisper from another era. It wasn't a major hub, not even a particularly busy commuter stop. It was the absolute end, tucked away in a forgotten industrial corner of the city, notorious for being desolate and rarely used. David had only been there once, years ago, and remembered a cavernous, dimly lit space that felt more like a tomb than a transit point. Most people got off long before Blackwood, unless they lived in the few isolated residential blocks that bordered the old factories. As the train slowed, a shudder running through its metal bones, David noticed Mrs. Albright finally close her book. It was the first time he'd ever seen her do it. She tucked it carefully into her satchel, then with a slow, almost painful effort, pushed herself up from her seat. Her movements were deliberate, each one an ancient ritual. The train hissed to a halt, the doors sliding open with a sigh. The platform at Blackwood Station was exactly as David remembered. Stark, cavernous, and empty. Fluorescent lights flickered overhead, casting long dancing shadows that seemed to stretch and contort with every subtle movement. A cold metallic smell hung in the air, a mix of ozone and damp concrete. There was no one waiting on the platform, no sound but the distant hum of the train's machinery and the drip of water somewhere in the vast darkness. Mrs. Albright stepped onto the platform. David, out of a strange, uncharacteristic curiosity, watched her. She took one step, then another, her gaze fixed straight ahead, an expression of serene purpose on her aged face. She wasn't looking for a sign or a map, or even a way out. She was simply walking. Then it happened. Mrs. Albright took her third step onto the platform, and as her foot landed, her form shimmered. Not like a heat haze or a trick of the light, but like a faulty projection. Her outline blurred, her colors momentarily inverted, and then, as if she were a ripple in a cosmic pond, she simply vanished. One moment she was there, a frail old woman in a floral scarf, half a dozen paces from the train doors. The next, the space where she stood was empty. No puff of smoke, no sound, no dissolving into thin air. She was just gone, as if she had never existed. David froze. His breath hitched in his throat. His mind, usually so sharp and logical, scrambled for an explanation. A trick of the light? A sudden impossible speed? But no, it was too complete, too absolute. He blinked hard, rubbing his eyes, convinced he was hallucinating from exhaustion. He looked again. The spot was still empty. The shadows still danced. The platform was still desolate. The old man across from him hadn't moved, still staring at his reflection, oblivious. A chill colder than the late-night air snaked down David's spine. His heart hammered against his ribs, a frantic drumbeat of pure terror. He wanted to shout, to point, to demand an explanation, but no sound emerged. His throat felt like sandpaper. A low mechanical groan echoed through the carriage. The doors began to slide shut, slowly, inexorably. David lunged forward, his hand slamming against the rubber edge of the closing doors, forcing them to retract with a surprised hiss. He burst out onto the platform, his eyes wide, scanning frantically. "Hello," he called out, his voice a hoarse whisper, swallowed by the vastness of the station. "Mrs. Albright? Is anyone there?" Only the echo of his own voice answered him, bouncing off the concrete columns and disappearing into the darkness beyond the flickering lights. He spun around, his gaze darting from one shadowy recess to another. Nothing. The platform stretched out, empty save for a single forgotten newspaper blowing lazily in a phantom breeze. His heart still pounding, David's eyes fell upon a small, dark object lying on the grimy platform, exactly where Mrs. Albright's foot had landed before she vanished. He stumbled towards it, his mind screaming at him to get back on the train, but an irresistible force pulled him closer. It was the thick leather-bound book, the one Mrs. Albright had been reading for months. It lay open, face down, its worn pages exposed to the harsh fluorescent light. As David reached for it, another groan reverberated through the station. The train doors, which he had forced open, began to close again, this time with a definitive, unyielding finality. He barely had time to snatch the book, tucking it under his arm, before the doors sealed shut with a soft thud. He was alone on the platform, utterly, terrifyingly alone. Then an impossible sound. The train, which was supposed to stay at the last stop for some time before heading back to the depot, began to move. Slowly at first, then picking up speed, its metal wheels screeching against the tracks. David could only watch, horrified, as the single-lit carriage, with the old man still staring blankly inside, receded into the tunnel, leaving him in the oppressive silence and dim light of Blackwood Station. The last train. Gone. David stood there, panting, the book clutched tightly to his chest. He was trapped. But that wasn't the worst of it. The worst was the image burned into his mind. The shimmering, the blurring, and the absolute impossible disappearance of Mrs. Albright. He wasn't just trapped. He was trapped with an inexplicable, terrifying secret, the sole witness to an event that defied all logic, all reason. Was he dreaming? Was he insane? Or had he just seen something that was never meant to be seen? And what exactly was Blackwood Station? A forgotten end of the line, or something far more sinister, a place where people simply ceased to be? The cold, metallic smell in the air suddenly felt less like ozone and more like the stale breath of something ancient and hungry. He looked down at the book in his hands. Its leather cover felt strangely warm, almost alive. He had to know what was inside. He had to know what had happened to Mrs. Albright. And he had to find a way out of here, before whatever took her decided it was his turn to vanish. The silence of Blackwood Station pressed in on him, heavy and suffocating. A silent promise that the night had only just begun. The silence of Blackwood Station pressed in on him, heavy and suffocating. A silent promise that the night had only just begun. Michael's heart hammered against his ribs, a frantic drumbeat in the oppressive quiet. His breath hitched, a cold tremor running through him. He instinctively reached for his phone, pulling it from his pocket. The screen flashed, a stark reminder of his isolation. No service. He tried to call 911 again, but the call wouldn't even attempt to connect. Panic, cold and sharp, began to prick at the edges of his composure. This wasn't just a power outage. This was something far more profound, far more terrifying. Mrs. Albright was gone, vanished, and he was alone. His gaze swept the platform, searching for any sign, any anomaly, anything that could explain what he'd witnessed. The train was still there, its lights off, a hulking shadow against the dim emergency lighting. The doors were closed. He ran a hand through his hair, the chill of the station seeping into his bones. He had to get out. His priority shifted from understanding to escaping. He rushed towards the main exit, the one he'd entered through, the one that led up to the street level. His heavy boots echoed loudly on the concrete, the sound unnaturally amplified in the vast empty space. He pushed against the emergency exit bar, but it didn't budge. He tried again, throwing his shoulder into it, but it was locked solid, unyielding. He tried the metal gate that usually remained open during operating hours. It was drawn shut, a heavy chain and padlock securing it. He rattled it, the metallic clang piercing the silence, but it was no use. He was trapped. A strangled cry escaped his throat, a raw, desperate sound that seemed to be swallowed instantly by the station's cavernous maw. He backed away, his eyes wide, scanning for another way out. There was the emergency stairwell at the far end of the platform, past where the train had stopped. He'd never paid much attention to it before, just a red door with a glowing exit sign above it. He started towards it, a flicker of hope igniting in his chest. As he moved past the train, its metallic shell felt cold and lifeless. He glanced at the windows, seeing only his own distorted reflection staring back from the darkened glass. The air grew colder, a damp, earthy smell filling his nostrils, distinct from the usual metallic tang of the subway. He reached the red door, pushing against the crash bar. It opened with a groan, revealing a narrow concrete stairwell descending into absolute darkness. No light, not even an emergency one. A wave of apprehension washed over him. This wasn't a way out, it felt like a way further in. He hesitated, but the thought of staying on the platform, waiting for whatever took Mrs. Albright, was worse. He pulled out his phone again, activating the flashlight. The beam cut through the gloom, illuminating a steep, dusty flight of stairs going down, and another going up. He looked up first, hoping it led to another exit, but the stairs curved out of sight into more darkness. He decided to try the upward path first. He started climbing, his footsteps heavy, the only sound in the suffocating silence. The air grew colder with each step, the dampness more pronounced. Cobwebs brushed against his face, and the smell of mildew and stagnant water intensified. This stairwell clearly hadn't been used in a long time. He reached what felt like a landing, the beam of his phone cutting through the thick darkness. He found another door, identical to the one on the platform. He tried the handle. Locked. He pushed, he pulled, he even kicked it, but it remained stubbornly shut. Despair began to set in, a cold, heavy weight in his stomach. Every exit was sealed. He was truly stuck. He turned back, the only option now being to descend. He moved slowly, cautiously, his flashlight beam dancing ahead, revealing peeling paint on the concrete walls and dark, unidentifiable stains. The air grew heavier, colder, and a faint, almost imperceptible hum started to vibrate through the soles of his boots. It wasn't the sound of machinery, more like a low, resonant thrumming from deep within the earth. He reached the bottom of the stairs, the cold now biting at him. The hum was louder here, a steady, unsettling vibration. His flashlight revealed a long, narrow tunnel, stretching into the blackness. This wasn't a passenger area. This was a maintenance tunnel, perhaps, or an abandoned section of the line. The walls were rough-hewn rock in places, concrete in others patched and decaying. Water dripped steadily from unseen cracks, echoing in the profound silence. Michael shivered, pulling his jacket tighter. Why was this access open? And why was he the only one here? The questions swirled in his mind, each one more unsettling than the last. He had to go back to the platform. This tunnel felt wrong, profoundly wrong. He turned to retrace his steps, but then his flashlight beam caught something on the ground, near the base of the stairs. A small, intricately carved wooden bird. His blood ran cold. He recognized it. Mrs. Albright had been holding it when she boarded the train. She'd been meticulously polishing it with a soft cloth, humming a tuneless melody. It was her lucky charm, she'd told him once, a gift from her late husband. He knelt, his hand trembling as he picked it up. The wood was smooth, cool to the touch. It was undeniably hers. But why was it here, at the bottom of a disused stairwell, in a dark, damp tunnel? His mind raced. She must have dropped it. But how did she get here? Had she been dragged? Had she somehow entered this tunnel herself? The thought sent a fresh wave of terror through him. He stood up slowly, the wooden bird clutched tightly in his hand, his gaze sweeping the tunnel. The hum was louder now, a low guttural growl that seemed to vibrate in his chest. It wasn't mechanical. It sounded organic. He took a tentative step into the tunnel, his flashlight beam cutting through the oppressive darkness. The air was thick with the smell of damp earth and something else, something metallic and faintly acrid, like ozone after a lightning strike. He moved slowly, cautiously, his senses on high alert. Every drip of water, every creak of the old infrastructure, sent jolts of fear through him. He called out, his voice hoarse, "Mrs. Albright? Hello." His words echoed, then died, swallowed by the vast emptiness. He walked for what felt like an eternity, the tunnel twisting and turning, occasionally branching off into smaller, even darker passages. The hum grew steadily louder, a deep, resonant vibration that now seemed to emanate from the very rock walls around him. He felt it in his teeth, in his bones. It was a sound that didn't belong to any known machinery. Then he saw it. A faint, pulsing light in the distance at the very end of the tunnel. It was a sickly greenish hue, flickering erratically, casting long, dancing shadows that seemed to writhe and contort on the tunnel walls. His heart leaped into his throat. A light. Could it be another exit? Or was it something else? He started to move faster, a desperate hope mingling with a growing sense of dread. The air grew colder, the acrid smell stronger. The green light pulsed, growing brighter, revealing a cavernous space at the tunnel's end. It wasn't a natural cave. It was an artificial chamber, immense and cylindrical, far larger than any subway tunnel he'd ever seen. The green light pulsed from a series of strange, glowing panels embedded in the curved walls, illuminating a vast, metallic structure in the center of the chamber. It was unlike anything he could comprehend. It was enormous, intricate, made of a dark, obsidian-like metal that seemed to absorb the light rather than reflect it. Strange symbols, glowing with the same eerie green light, were etched into its surface. It hummed with a deep, powerful energy, the source of the vibration that had been rattling his bones. And then he saw her, Mrs. Albright. She was standing near the structure, her back to him, her posture strangely rigid. Her hands were clasped in front of her, and she seemed to be staring intently at the glowing symbols on the obsidian metal. Her hair, usually neatly coiffed, was disheveled, and her clothes were rumpled. "Mrs. Albright," Michael called out, his voice a desperate whisper. She didn't react. She didn't turn. He took a step closer, then another, his fear momentarily overridden by relief and confusion. What was she doing here? What was this place? As he drew nearer, he saw the subtle, horrifying truth. Her body was indeed rigid, but not in a tension. Her arms were held out slightly from her sides, not clasped. Her head was tilted at an unnatural angle, and her skin, in the flickering green light, had an unnatural pallor, a waxy translucence. Her eyes, though he couldn't see them directly, felt fixed, vacant. A cold dread, more profound than anything he had yet experienced, settled over him. This wasn't Mrs. Albright, not really. Not the vibrant, talkative woman he knew. He was close enough now to see her hands. They were not clasped. They were outstretched, palms open, almost as if she were offering something to the strange, humming structure. And from her fingertips, thin, almost invisible tendrils of green light seemed to emanate, connecting her to the glowing symbols on the obsidian metal. It was as if she were being drained or charged or assimilated. The hum intensified, vibrating through the very air, rattling his teeth. The green light pulsed faster, brighter, casting grotesque, shifting shadows. He could feel a pressure building in his head, a dizzying nausea. His mind screamed at him to run, but his feet felt rooted to the spot, his eyes fixed on the horrifying tableau before him. Then a low guttural sound echoed from the chamber, a deep, resonant thrum that was not the hum of the structure, but something else entirely. It sounded like a breath, a sigh, a monstrous awakening. The green light flared, blinding him for a moment. When his vision cleared, the tendrils of light connecting Mrs. Albright to the structure had thickened, pulsed with an unnerving intensity. Her body, still rigid, began to glow faintly with the same sickly green light. A new sound joined the hum, a faint, almost imperceptible whisper, emanating from the structure itself. It wasn't a language he recognized, but it was undeniably a voice, ancient and alien. A chilling melody woven into the thrumming energy. It spoke of things unknown, of depths unseen, of a presence that had lain dormant beneath the city for centuries, now stirring. Michael stumbled backward, a choked gasp escaping his lips. This was not a subway station. This was not an accident. This was something beyond his comprehension, something terrifyingly alive. And Mrs. Albright, she was no longer just missing. She was part of it. He had to get out. He had to warn someone. But as he turned to flee, the shadows in the vast chamber seemed to lengthen, to coalesce, and the whispering voice from the obsidian structure grew louder, clearer, now speaking a single chilling word that echoed in his mind, echoing the very name of the station he was trapped in, a silent, predatory promise that he was already too late. Michael's blood ran cold. The word, a ghostly exhalation, was his own personal terror made manifest. It wasn't just a name. It was the name, the very label of the place he now found himself utterly, irrevocably trapped. It resonated in his mind, not like an echo, but like a seed planted deep within his consciousness, sprouting tendrils of icy fear. He stumbled back, his breath catching in his throat, his eyes wide and darting, desperate for an escape, for a shred of logic to cling to. The train was gone, vanished. The tunnel mouth, a gaping maw of impenetrable darkness, offered no explanation, no reassurance. Only the chilling wind, whistling its mournful tune, seemed to acknowledge his presence. He was alone, truly terrifyingly alone. The silence that followed the train's departure was not empty. It was heavy, laden with an unseen presence, a watchful malevolence that made the hairs on his arms stand on end. He reached for his phone, a futile gesture. No signal. Of course. Why would there be? This wasn't just a deserted station. It was a forgotten one. A place scrubbed clean from the world's memory, except for the single spectral train that had delivered him here. He tried the emergency intercom, the red box on the wall looking ancient, crusty with grime. He pressed the button once, twice, a dozen times. Nothing. Just a dead click, like a broken bone in the station's skeletal frame. A wave of irrationality threatened to engulf him. Had he fallen asleep? Was this some elaborate, terrifying dream? He pinched himself hard. The sharp sting in his arm was a cruel affirmation of reality. This was happening. He was awake, and he was here. He spun around, his gaze swept across the platform, searching for anything, anyone. The benches, worn and scarred, stood empty. The tiled walls, once pristine, now showed the decay of decades, water stains crawling like skeletal fingers across their surface. The air was thick with the scent of damp concrete and something else. Something metallic and vaguely organic, like old blood and rust. His eyes were drawn back to the obsidian structure. It stood there, monolithic and silent, a stark contrast to the decaying station around it. It pulsed with a faint, internal luminescence that seemed to draw the very light from the air, making the surrounding shadows deeper, more pronounced. He felt its gaze, a heavy, unblinking stare that burrowed into his very soul. The whispering had stopped, but the feeling of its voice lingered, a phantom touch on his eardrums. He took a tentative step towards it, then another. His logical mind screamed at him to run, to hide, but a terrifying curiosity, a morbid fascination, pulled him forward. He needed to understand. He needed to know what this thing was, what it wanted, and why it had spoken to him. As he drew closer, the faint luminescence intensified, revealing intricate patterns etched into the stone. They weren't just random designs. They were symbols, alien and complex, swirling like trapped smoke. He couldn't decipher them, but they filled him with a profound sense of dread, as if he was looking at a language of cosmic horror, a script meant to unravel the sanity of any who gazed upon it too long. Then he saw it. Near the base of the structure, partially obscured by shadow, was a small, almost imperceptible indentation. It wasn't a natural flaw in the stone. It was a deliberate carving, a symbol that, unlike the others, seemed vaguely familiar. It was a stylized eye, narrow and elongated, with a single tear dropping from its inner corner. His mind raced, trying to place it. Where had he seen this before? A sudden, sickening lurch in his stomach. He hadn't seen it before. He had felt it. He remembered the unsettling sensation he'd experienced just before the train doors sealed shut, that fleeting moment of unease, like a cold hand brushing against his soul. It was the same feeling he had now, amplified 100-fold, radiating from the obsidian monolith. This symbol, this weeping eye, was the source. A sudden sharp clang echoed from the far end of the platform. Michael startled, his heart leaping into his throat. He spun around, his eyes scanning the darkness. Nothing. Just the oppressive silence settling back in, heavier than before. Was it his imagination? The station playing tricks on his frayed nerves? Or was something else here with him? He backed away from the obsidian structure, its silent scrutiny feeling more intense, more personal now. He needed to find another way out. The stairs. There had to be stairs leading up to the street level and exit a way back to the world he knew. He hurried down the platform, his footsteps echoing eerily loudly in the vast empty space. He passed a row of faded advertisements, their cheerful colors long since leached away by time and damp, now just ghostly smears on the walls. One in particular caught his eye. It was an ad for some long-forgotten brand of soda, featuring a smiling family, their faces blurred and indistinct. But beneath it, scrawled clumsily with what looked like a piece of charcoal, was a single word: watch. Michael froze. A cold dread seeped into his bones. He wasn't imagining things. Someone had been here. Someone had left a message. But who? And why? He quickened his pace, a desperate urgency propelling him forward. He reached the end of the platform, where a wide tiled staircase ascended into the gloom. Hope, a fragile flickering flame, ignited within him. This was it. The way out. He took the steps two at a time, his muscles screaming in protest, his lungs burning. The staircase was long, winding upwards, seemingly endlessly. The air grew colder as he ascended, carrying with it a faint earthy smell like overturned soil. He could hear his own ragged breathing, loud and desperate in the silence. Finally, he reached what he hoped was the top. He pushed through a heavy metal door, its hinges groaning in protest, sending a shower of rust flakes to the floor. He emerged into a small, windowless chamber. It was another concourse, but even more dilapidated than the platform below. Dust motes danced in the faint shafts of light filtering in from unseen cracks in the ceiling. His heart sank. This wasn't the street. This was just another level of the labyrinthine station. Ahead of him, another set of stairs led upwards, but these were narrower, steeper, almost like a service stairwell. To his left, a long dark corridor stretched into oppressive darkness, its walls lined with what looked like abandoned lockers. To his right, a partially collapsed section of the ceiling revealed a gaping hole, leading to what appeared to be even more darkness above. He felt a profound sense of disorientation. How deep did this place go? How many levels were there? It felt like a descent into the earth itself, a forgotten tomb. He chose the corridor with the lockers, hoping it might lead to an exit, perhaps a staff entrance or an emergency escape route. He moved cautiously, his hand brushing against the cold, grimy metal of the lockers. Each one seemed to whisper secrets of those who had once used them, forgotten passengers, lost souls. As he walked, a faint rhythmic sound began to filter through the silence. Thump, thump, thump. It was soft at first, barely perceptible, but it steadily grew louder, more distinct. It wasn't human footsteps. It was too heavy, too deliberate, too organic. It sounded like something large, something heavy, moving slowly, deliberately, somewhere ahead of him in the darkness. Michael froze, his blood turning to ice. He pressed himself against the lockers, his breath held captive in his chest. The sound continued, growing closer. Thump, thump, thump. He peered into the gloom, straining his eyes. The corridor was long, and the light from the concourse barely penetrated halfway. The source of the sound was still hidden in the inky blackness. Panic began to set in, cold and sharp. This wasn't just an abandoned station. This was something else entirely. Something was here with him. Something that made that whispering voice from the obsidian structure seem like a benign greeting. He instinctively reached for a weapon, anything. His hand closed around a loose metal pipe protruding from one of the lockers. It was short, heavy, and rusted, but it was something. He clutched it tightly, his knuckles white. The thump, thump, thump grew louder, closer. It was definitely moving towards him. And now, accompanying it, was a faint, wet, dragging sound, like something heavy being pulled across the grimy floor. A low, guttural rumble vibrated through the air, too deep to be human. Michael's heart hammered against his ribs, a frantic drumbeat of terror. He pressed himself further into the shadows between the lockers, trying to become invisible. He could feel the vibrations of the approaching presence in the very soles of his feet. Then, a shape began to emerge from the darkness. It was massive, hulking, vaguely humanoid, but distorted, elongated, its limbs seeming too long, too spindly. It moved with a slow, deliberate cadence, its massive bulk swaying with each step. The dragging sound intensified, revealing itself to be an appendage, something long and sinuous, trailing behind it on the floor. It was impossibly tall, its head almost brushing the low ceiling of the corridor. Its skin seemed to shimmer with an oily dark sheen, reflecting the sparse light in unsettling ways. Michael couldn't make out any distinct features, just a vast, formless shadow, a gaping void where a face should be, but he felt its presence, a primal ancient hunger emanating from it. It stopped, barely 20 feet from where Michael was hidden. The thump, thump, thump ceased, replaced by an eerie, absolute silence. The wet dragging sound stopped. The low rumble stopped. Michael couldn't breathe. He was a statue, frozen in terror, his eyes wide, fixed on the monstrous silhouette. He could feel its gaze even without seeing eyes. He felt it searching, sniffing the air, its presence radiating an unholy awareness. Then, slowly, deliberately, the hulking shape began to turn its vast head, its featureless face slowly sweeping across the corridor. Michael knew with a certainty that chilled him to his core that it was looking for him. It was hunting him, and it was getting closer. He could hear his own heartbeat, thunderous in his ears, threatening to betray his hiding spot. He felt a cold breath on his skin, a sudden drop in temperature around him, as if the very air was being consumed by the creature's presence. He had to move. He had to run. But his limbs refused to obey, locked in a paralysis of fear. The creature continued its slow, deliberate scan, its gaze passing over the lockers, inching closer to his hiding spot. He saw it then. A faint, almost imperceptible shimmer in the darkness where its face should be. It wasn't eyes, not in the human sense. It was a shifting, swirling pattern of darkness like a vortex, and at its center, for a fleeting, horrifying moment, he saw it. The stylized weeping eye, the same symbol etched into the obsidian monolith, burning with an inner malevolent light. Saw him. A guttural roar, not loud but deep, vibrating through the very foundations of the station, ripped through the silence. The creature lunged forward, its massive, elongated arm shooting out towards Michael's hiding spot, its sinuous appendage whipping through the air like a monstrous tail. Michael screamed, a raw, primal sound of pure terror, and finally his body obeyed. He threw himself backwards, scrambling away from the lockers, the metal pipe clattering uselessly to the floor. He didn't look back. He just ran. He ran blindly, desperately, back towards the concourse, back towards the stairs, back towards any direction that wasn't towards that thing. The thump, thump, thump resumed, now faster, more urgent, echoing his own pounding footsteps. The dragging sound was louder, closer. It was pursuing him. He burst back into the small concourse, gasping for air, his lungs burning. He didn't hesitate. He raced towards the second, narrower staircase, the one that led further up, hoping against hope that it would lead to an exit, to sunlight, to salvation. He scrambled up the steep, winding steps, his hands scraping against the rough, dusty concrete. He could hear the creature below, its heavy footfalls shaking the very structure of the station, its guttural roars echoing up the stairwell. It was gaining on him. He reached the top, his muscles screaming, his vision blurring. Another heavy metal door. This one looked even older, more rusted than the last. He slammed his shoulder against it once, twice, a third time, his strength failing. It wouldn't budge. It was locked. A wave of despair washed over him, colder than any fear. He was trapped. Again. He could hear the creature lumbering up the final steps of the stairwell, its shadow already beginning to stretch across the ceiling above him. There was nowhere left to go. Then, through the grime-streaked glass pane of the door, he saw it. A faint flickering light. Not daylight, but an artificial glow, almost like a torch. And beyond it, a narrow, dark hallway, lined with what looked like more abandoned machinery. He slammed his shoulder against the door again, a desperate, final attempt. This time, with a tortured groan of metal, the lock gave way, the door swinging inward with a screech that tore through the heavy silence. He stumbled through, gasping, his eyes darting frantically around the new space. It was a service tunnel, cramped and claustrophobic, but it offered a sliver of hope. The flickering light was coming from deeper within, casting dancing shadows on the grimy walls. He could hear the creature burst through the door behind him, its heavy thud shaking the ground. He heard a low growl, a sound of frustrated rage. It was right there. He didn't look back. He ran towards the light, his heart pounding a frantic rhythm against his ribs, a single desperate prayer forming on his lips. Asterisk, please let this be the way out. Please let me escape. Asterisk, he didn't know what the light meant, who or what was making it, but it was better than the darkness behind him, better than the monstrous, weeping eye that hunted him through the forgotten depths of the last stop on the subway line. He just kept running, the flickering light his only guide, his only hope, into the unknown. His lungs burned, a raw searing pain that echoed the frantic pounding of his heart against his ribs. Each desperate stride sent jolts of agony through his calves, but he couldn't stop. The light ahead, a sickly yellow pulse, was his only beacon, dancing mockingly at the edge of his vision. Behind him, the suffocating presence of it still lingered, a cold, heavy dread that clung to his back like a shroud. He didn't dare look, couldn't bear to see the monstrous eye again, its silent, wet sorrow a prelude to something far worse. He burst through a crumbling archway, the air suddenly thick with the scent of ozone and something metallic, like stale blood mixed with rust. The tunnel here was different, no longer the rough-hewn concrete of the maintenance shafts, but a passage of intricately carved stone, slick with condensation. Strange geometric patterns, half obscured by grime and shadow, adorned the walls, hinting at an architecture far older than any subway system. This wasn't just a forgotten corner. This was a place hidden. The flickering light now seemed to emanate from a single bare bulb hanging precariously from a frayed wire far ahead, casting long dancing shadows that twisted the ancient carvings into grotesque faces. Michael stumbled, catching himself on a cold, damp wall. His hand grazed something smooth, almost polished, beneath layers of grime. He wiped a patch clear, revealing a symbol, a jagged, broken circle with 3 radiating lines. It felt significant, familiar somehow, yet utterly alien. He pushed forward, his mind reeling, the symbol etched into his memory. What was this place? And why did it feel like he was walking into a dream? Or perhaps a nightmare he couldn't escape? The light intensified as he rounded a bend, revealing a small, recessed chamber carved directly into the stone. It wasn't a natural cave, nor part of any modern infrastructure. This was deliberate, ancient, yet somehow recently occupied. The bare bulb, coated in dust and grime, swung gently, casting its erratic glow over a scene that made Michael freeze. On the floor, a makeshift bed fashioned from old train seat cushions and a tattered blanket lay against the far wall. Empty, crinkled snack wrappers, surprisingly modern, were scattered nearby. A dented metal thermos, a half-eaten energy bar, and a small worn backpack sat next to the bed. Someone had been here recently. Michael's heart hammered against his ribs, not just from the exertion of running, but from a sudden terrifying surge of hope mixed with dread. He wasn't alone, but was that a good thing? Or did it mean someone else had also fallen prey to this terrifying place? He moved closer, his footsteps echoing too loudly in the confined space. The air was stale, heavy, but held no immediate threat, only the lingering scent of human presence. He scanned the small chamber, his eyes darting from object to object. On a small flat ledge carved into the stone, a collection of items lay neatly arranged. Several smooth black river stones, a few rusted gears from what looked like an old clock, and a small leather-bound journal. His breath hitched. A journal, a record, perhaps answers. Michael reached for it, his fingers trembling as he picked it up. The leather was supple but cold, the pages slightly damp. He opened it, the faint script within illuminated by the flickering bulb. The handwriting was tight, almost frantic, but legible. The first entry he saw was dated just 3 weeks ago. Day 1. Still can't believe this. 1 minute, waiting for the express, the next, the train just stopped. Everyone gone. Just me. In this place. Elysium Fields. What kind of joke is this? The doors wouldn't open. The emergency brake did nothing. Then the lights went out. All except for that light. The one that pulled me further in. Like a moth to a flame. Michael swallowed hard. The story was horrifyingly familiar. He flipped forward, his eyes scanning for clues, for any hint of what had happened to the journal's owner. Day 5. The silence is the worst. Broken only by my own breathing and other things. Drips. Scuttles. And sometimes a sound like crying. Like a giant sorrowful sob. It comes from the dark. It hunts. I know it does. I've seen glimpses. A shadow. A shape. An eye glistening with something wet and terrible. It watches. Always watches. Michael felt a chill crawl up his spine. A cold confirmation of his own nightmare. The weeping eye. It wasn't just in his head. Someone else had seen it, experienced it. Asterisk Day 10. Found this chamber. A sanctuary, I hope. It's ancient here. The carvings, they're everywhere. That symbol, the broken circle. It's on the walls, etched into the floor. Feels like a map. Or a warning. I think it means rupture. A break in something. A gateway. But to what? Or from what? Asterisk. Michael looked up, his gaze drawn to the very symbol he had seen outside the chamber, now confirming its significance. A rupture? A gateway? His mind raced, trying to piece together the fragmented horror. He turned more pages, the entries growing shorter, more desperate. Asterisk Day 14. The food is running low. I'm cold. So cold. The light, it's a trick. It leads you on, promises safety, but it's just another piece of the maze. It's not a way out. It's a lure. I saw something in the shadows today. Not the eye. Something else. Smaller. Faster. It moved like a whisper. Asterisk. Asterisk Day 18. The weeping. It's closer now. I can hear it even in here. It rattles the stone. Seeking. It wants something. What do we have that it wants? Our fear? Our essence? I don't know how much longer I can hide. The symbol. I've been tracing it, trying to understand. It repeats. Over and over. A loop. We're in a loop. Asterisk. Michael's breath hitched again. A loop. Was this station some kind of perpetual trap? He turned to the final entries. The handwriting was nearly illegible, scrawled, frantic lines crisscrossing the page. Asterisk Day 21. They're here. The small ones. They came from the walls. Like shadows given form. They don't speak, but they point. Always towards the weeping. It wants me to feel its pull. Heavy. Cold. It's not just an eye. It's the heart of this place. It's Elysium Fields itself. Asterisk. Asterisk Day 22. The light. It's fading. So am I. Don't trust the light. Don't trust the silence. The symbol, it's not a map. It's a signpost. A direction. To where? The other side. I think this place feeds. It consumes. And the weeping, it's not sorrow. It's hunger. It's a promise. A promise of eternal rest. But not for us. For it. Asterisk. The last entry was barely a few words, smeared and almost indecipherable, as if written in a rush, or by a hand that could no longer hold a pen steady. Asterisk. Sarah, don't come back. Don't. It watches. Asterisk. Michael stared at the name Sarah. A wave of profound sorrow washing over him. This person trapped here had left a warning. A desperate plea for someone named Sarah to stay away. And then nothing. The journal abruptly ended. He looked around the small chamber, now feeling less like a sanctuary and more like a tomb. What had happened to the journal's owner? Were they taken by the weeping eye? Consumed by the station? Or had they found a way out? A way through the rupture hinted at by the symbol? A faint, almost imperceptible tremor ran through the stone floor beneath his feet. It was subtle, barely there, but Michael felt it deeply, resonating through his bones. It was accompanied by a low, guttural thrum, a sound that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once, rising and falling like a slow, deliberate breath. The air in the chamber grew heavy, cold, and the flickering bulb above him intensified its erratic dance, dimming almost to darkness before flaring back to life, each pulse mirroring the frantic beat of his own heart. The weeping eye, Michael knew, was close. Too close. And it wasn't just watching anymore. It was coming for him. The air crackled, not with electricity, but with something far more ancient, far more malevolent. Michael didn't just see the eye anymore, he felt it. A cold, heavy presence that pressed down on his chest, stealing the air from his lungs. The flickering light intensified its erratic dance, dimming almost to darkness before flaring back to life, each pulse mirroring the frantic beat of his own heart. The weeping eye, Michael knew, was close. Too close. And it wasn't just watching anymore. It was coming for him. A guttural cry, more animal than human, tore from his throat, a sound he barely recognized as his own. He spun, his feet scrambling on the uneven ballast, the sharp metallic tang of fear filling his mouth. Run! The command screamed through his mind, overriding every other thought, every rational instinct. He didn't know where he was going, only that it had to be away from that. Away from the undulating light that pulsed with a sorrowful, sickening rhythm, a light that now seemed to drift, not just watch, but move with an unnerving purpose. He stumbled, catching himself on the cold, grimy wall of the tunnel, his hands scraping against decades of accumulated dirt and rust. The beam of his flashlight, now a frantic, jiggling mess, illuminated brief, terrifying glimpses of what lay ahead. More tracks, more oppressive darkness, and the endless curving concrete that seemed to swallow all hope. Behind him, he felt it. Not just a light, not just a presence, but a pressure, like a vast, unseen hand closing in. A faint, high-pitched whine, almost imperceptible beneath the roar of his own blood in his ears, seemed to emanate from the approaching light. It was a sound that twisted something deep inside him, a sound of profound, unbearable grief, yet utterly alien. His legs burned, each stride an act of desperate will. The air grew heavier, colder, laden with a scent he couldn't quite place. Metallic like old blood, mixed with the acrid tang of ozone and something profoundly organic, like wet earth and decay. His breath hitched in ragged gasps, his vision blurring at the edges. He pushed harder, the image of that weeping eye seared into his mind, the memory of its sorrowful glow propelling him forward into the unknown. He glanced back, a foolish, fatalistic urge, and saw it. Closer. The light was larger now, a shimmering, translucent sphere, its interior swirling with dark, liquid shadows that seemed to churn and coalesce, forming and reforming that single sorrowful eye. And from its surface, a faint, viscous shimmer like tears seemed to trail in its wake, evaporating into the cold, damp air. He knew with a certainty that chilled him to the bone that this was no hallucination. This was real, and it was hunting him. He veered sharply, desperate to break line of sight, to find some cover in the oppressive monotony of the tunnel. An old, rusting maintenance access door, barely visible in the gloom, suddenly loomed to his left. Without thinking, without assessing, he flung himself at it, shoulder first. The ancient metal shrieked in protest, the latch groaning, but it held. He slammed against it again, and this time with a tortured screech it gave way, swinging inward into absolute blackness. He tumbled through, flashlight clattering to the concrete floor, plunging him into a darkness so profound it felt like a physical weight. The door swung shut behind him with a dull thud, sealing him in. For a moment he lay there, gasping, heart hammering against his ribs, the metallic taste of fear overwhelming. He scrambled for his flashlight, his fingers brushing against cold, damp concrete, then something slick and yielding. He recoiled, a gasp catching in his throat, before his fingers closed around the familiar cold metal of the flashlight. He clicked it on, the beam cutting a narrow swathe through the inky blackness. He was in a small, cramped chamber, barely wider than his outstretched arms. The air was stagnant, thick with dust and the pervasive smell of mildew and something else. Something faintly chemical like old battery acid. The walls were rough-hewn concrete, weeping moisture and dark, glistening streaks. Along one wall, a series of shelves, rusted and collapsing, held a chaotic jumble of forgotten tools. Wrenches caked with grease, coils of brittle wire, empty oil cans, and what looked like a shattered lantern. And on the floor, directly in front of him, was what his hand had brushed against. A thick, dark stain spreading out from under a collapsed section of shelving. It was old, dried, but unmistakably the color of dried blood. His stomach lurched. He took a shaky step back, eyes scanning the small space. There was no other exit, no other door. He was trapped. The realization hit him with a fresh wave of panic, worse than the chase. He was now cornered, and it was out there just beyond that flimsy door. He pressed his ear against the cold metal, straining to hear over the pounding of his own heart. A faint, high-pitched hum, like a distant, sorrowful song, vibrated through the steel. It was still there, waiting. He slowly turned, his flashlight beam sweeping across the grimy walls, seeking any inscription, any sign, anything that could give him a clue. His gaze fell upon a section of wall where the moisture seemed to have washed away some of the grime, revealing faded graffiti. Not random tags, but strange, intricate symbols etched deeply into the concrete. They looked ancient, almost runic, yet somehow familiar. They were circles interwoven with jagged lines and what looked like stylized tears or drops. They were the same symbols he'd seen carved into the old, forgotten benches at the station. The weeping eye symbols. A cold dread settled over him, deeper than any fear of the creature outside. This wasn't just a random occurrence. This was connected. The symbols, the eye, the abandoned station, the missing workers. It was all part of some horrifying tapestry. He traced one of the symbols with a trembling finger, the concrete cold and rough beneath his touch. What did they mean? Were they a warning? A ritual? His flashlight beam wavered, then began to flicker, mirroring the frantic pulse of the eye outside. The air in the chamber grew colder, the hum from the door intensifying, vibrating through the very concrete beneath his feet. He could feel the oppressive presence on the other side, a vast, sorrowful power pressing against the door, testing its flimsy resistance. He backed away from the door, pressing himself against the far wall, his eyes darting around the tiny space, searching for anything, any weapon, any means of defense. There was nothing, just dust, rust, and the chilling silence broken only by the hum and his own ragged breathing. Then a faint, almost imperceptible sound like a soft sigh seemed to emanate from the very walls around him. He froze, straining his ears. It wasn't the hum from the door. This was inside the chamber. He swept his flashlight around frantically, the beam catching on a small, recessed alcove high up in the wall, almost hidden by a crumbling shelf. It was too small for a person, but something was tucked inside. He stretched, his fingers brushing against a brittle leather-bound book, its cover thick with dust. He pulled it out, coughing as a cloud of ancient dust rose into the air. The leather was cracked and dry, the pages swollen with dampness. It was a journal. He flipped it open, his heart pounding with a mixture of terror and morbid curiosity. The handwriting inside was spidery and faded, almost illegible in places, but undeniably English. The date on the first visible page was October 17, 1978. They're gone again. 2 more. David and Emily. Just vanished. No trace. Management says it's personal reasons or transfers. But I know. We all know. They went down to check the old line, the one they never finished. The one they say is cursed. Michael's breath hitched. David and Emily. Common names. And the old line. This had to be it. He flipped through more pages, his eyes darting across the desperate entries. The humming. It's getting louder. Comes from the deep end of the line. Makes your teeth ache. Makes you feel watched. Saw the symbols today. On the walls. Always the same. The weeping eye. Old man Jenkins says they're a warning. Says the old ones demand their due. The lights flicker when it's near. And the cold. A cold that steals your breath. And the sound. It's a mournful sound like a child crying, but it's not a child. Something else. Something ancient. Full of sorrow and hunger. Michael could feel a cold sweat trickling down his back, mirroring the cold seeping from the walls. The journal entries were too precise, too terrifyingly accurate to what he was experiencing right now. The humming, the flickering lights, the cold, the sorrowful sound, the weeping eye symbols. This wasn't just a haunting. It was a repeating cycle. He continued to read, his fingers trembling, the pages almost disintegrating in his grip. It wants something. It needs something. And it finds it in the darkness, in the forgotten places. Feeds on despair, on loneliness. It draws you in with its sorrow, then it takes you whole. A sharp metallic ping echoed from the door, a sound like a taut wire snapping. Michael jumped, dropping the journal. The humming outside intensified, becoming a low, resonant thrum that vibrated through the entire chamber, rattling the sparse debris on the shelves. The air grew impossibly colder, and he could feel a distinct pressure against his eardrums, as if the very atmosphere was being compressed. He fumbled for the journal, his eyes wide with a desperate, burgeoning understanding. He picked it up, his gaze falling on the last entry, scrawled in a shaky, almost illegible hand. It's here. I hear it weeping. It knows I'm here. It's calling me. It's sorrow, it pulls at my soul. I can't resist. John. October 21st, 1978. The last stop. It's not the end of the line. It's where the line begins. The final words seemed to echo in the small chamber, chilling him to his core. John. Another missing worker. And he had been in this very room. He had hidden here just as Michael was now. And the weeping eye had found him. It had called him. It had taken him. The metal door before him began to buckle inward, slowly, agonizingly, with a high-pitched protesting shriek. A thin, viscous liquid, glowing faintly with that familiar sorrowful light, began to seep from the edges of the door, like tears from a giant unseen eye. The hum was now a deafening roar, and the cold was absolute, piercing him to the bone. The weeping eye wasn't just coming for him anymore. It was entering, and Michael, trapped in that tiny, forgotten chamber, knew he was about to become the next entry in its horrific, unending ledger. The last stop on the subway line, he realized with a sickening lurch, was about to claim its next victim. The sickening lurch in Michael's stomach was a premonition, a cold dread that seized his very core. But his mind, honed by years of navigating the city's hidden currents, refused to surrender. He scrambled back, pressing himself against the cold, damp stone of the chamber wall, his eyes darting wildly. The sounds weren't just entering. They were materializing, coalescing from the oppressive silence that had previously filled the forgotten space. It was a low, resonant hum, like ancient gears grinding deep beneath the earth, accompanied by a faint metallic scraping that seemed to emanate from the very air around him. A sliver of light, not from above, but from a barely perceptible seam in the wall opposite him, widened infinitesimally. It wasn't the comforting glow of a lamp, but a sickly phosphorescent green, casting long distorted shadows that writhed like living things. The air grew heavy, thick with the scent of ozone and something else. Something acrid and metallic, like old blood mixed with rust. Michael's breath hitched. He had to think. He had to act. His hands scrabbled against the rough stone, searching for anything, a loose rock, a shard of metal, a forgotten tool, anything that could serve as a weapon against the unseen horror that was now undeniably present. His fingers brushed against a cold, smooth surface, not stone, but a section of corroded metal plate that seemed out of place. He pushed, pulled, desperate. It gave way with a groan, revealing not an escape route, but a shallow recessed cavity in the wall, barely large enough for his hand. Inside, nestled amongst centuries of grime, was a small tarnished brass key, intricate and impossibly old. It felt heavy, imbued with a strange, almost electric chill. But there was no time to ponder its purpose. The green light intensified, pulsating rhythmically, and a new sound joined the chorus. A low guttural thrum that vibrated through the very soles of his shoes, resonating in his chest. A shadow, deeper than any natural darkness, began to coalesce in the center of the chamber, not quite solid, not quite empty. It moved with an unnatural fluidity, stretching and contracting, hinting at a form that defied human understanding. It was a presence malevolent and ancient, and it was focused entirely on him. Michael felt a primal urge to scream, to lash out, but his throat was dry, and every muscle in his body was locked in a terrifying paralysis. This wasn't a human threat he could fight, nor an animal he could outwit. This was something else, something that had waited in the dark, feeding on the forgotten. He remembered the ledger, the precise, chilling entries. This wasn't a random act of violence. It was a methodical, almost administrative process. And he was next on the list. His eyes, wide with terror, scanned the chamber once more, trying to find any detail, any anomaly, anything that could explain what he was seeing, what he was feeling. The green light pulsed again, and as it did, the shadows on the walls seemed to flicker, to momentarily resolve into fleeting, indistinct images. Faces. Distorted, silent screams. He saw the faint outlines of figures, contorted in silent agony, their forms pressed into the very stone, like ghostly imprints of the vanished. These weren't carvings, they were spectral echoes, trapped within the chamber's memory. The air grew colder, even as the metallic scent intensified, and a whisper, not of words but of raw, untamed horror, seemed to seep into his mind, bypassing his ears entirely. It was a chorus of the lost, a cacophony of fear and despair, all focused on him. The presence in the center of the room now seemed to solidify, not into a physical being, but into a denser void, a point of absolute cold and darkness that seemed to suck the light and warmth from the surrounding air. He could feel it pulling at him, a subtle, insidious suction, threatening to draw him into its abyssal heart. He stumbled, his legs almost giving out, but the brass key in his hand, though small, felt like a grounding anchor. Was it a coincidence he found it now? Or was this entity, this thing toying with him? He looked at the key again, its intricate design suddenly seeming familiar, almost like a symbol he'd seen before, perhaps in one of the old subway schematics, or even in the margins of the cryptic ledger entries. Then, a new detail emerged from the green-tinged shadows. On the wall directly in front of him, previously obscured by the shifting light, was a series of faded, almost invisible etched lines. They weren't random. They formed a complex diagram, a circular pattern with spokes radiating outwards, and at its center, a smaller recessed indentation. It was a lock, not for a door, but for something else, something designed to interface with the very structure of the chamber. And the indentation was the perfect size and shape for the brass key he held. A desperate surge of adrenaline coursed through him. This wasn't an escape route, but it felt like a puzzle, a last desperate gamble. He gripped the key tightly, his gaze fixed on the lock. The shadowy presence in the center of the chamber seemed to hesitate, its form wavering, as if surprised by his discovery, or perhaps amused. The whispered chorus in his mind intensified, turning into a mocking, chilling laugh that reverberated through his skull. Ignoring the terror, ignoring the insidious pull, Michael forced his trembling hand towards the etched lock. The cold, ancient metal of the key slid into the indentation with a soft click, a sound that cut through the cacophony of dread like a razor. He twisted it, his muscles straining. The lock resisted for a moment, then gave way with a deep, grinding thunk that echoed through the entire chamber. As the key turned completely, a section of the wall beside the diagram didn't open, but rather shifted. A series of unseen mechanisms whirred to life with a groan of ancient machinery, and a panel recessed into the wall slid open with a hiss of displaced air, revealing a narrow, vertical shaft. But it wasn't a dark tunnel leading to freedom. Instead, it was filled with a blinding, pulsating white light, unlike anything natural. And within that light, suspended in a shimmering ethereal mist, was not a passage, but a single ancient book. It wasn't the leather-bound ledger he'd seen before, but something far older, its cover made of a strange, dark material that seemed to absorb the light even as it glowed. Its pages, visible through the mist, were not paper, but thin, translucent sheets, covered in an indecipherable script that pulsed with the same white light. It was a book of pure energy, a repository of unimaginable knowledge, or perhaps unspeakable truth. The shadowy presence in the chamber recoiled slightly, its form flickering, as if the sudden burst of pure light from the shaft was anathema to it. The whispers in Michael's mind momentarily ceased, replaced by a profound, almost painful silence. This book, he realized, was not just a clue. It was the heart of the mystery, the true ledger, the record of everything this place had ever consumed. He reached for it, compelled by an instinct stronger than fear. His fingers brushed against the shimmering barrier of light, and a jolt, not of pain but of pure, raw information, surged through him. Images, fragments of forgotten lives, names, dates, locations, they flooded his mind with overwhelming speed, a torrent of data that threatened to shatter his consciousness. He saw faces, not just the spectral imprints on the walls, but vivid, heartbreakingly clear portraits of men and women, young and old, all with the same look of dawning horror in their eyes. He saw their last moments witnessed through the cold, impartial lens of the book. And he saw himself among them, a ghostly echo of his own face, already recorded, already claimed. The book wasn't just a record, it was a device. It was the mechanism by which this place, this last stop, absorbed and preserved its victims, not just their bodies, but their very essences, their memories, their fears. It was a living archive of the lost, and his entry was already being written. The shadowy presence, recovering from its momentary retreat, began to surge forward again, its form solidifying, no longer content to observe. It lunged, not with physical force, but with an invisible crushing weight, aiming to tear Michael away from the book, to seal his fate. Michael instinctively pulled his hand back, the flood of information momentarily overwhelming him. But in that split second, a single clear image had imprinted itself on his mind, a symbol hidden within the glowing script, a sequence of lines and angles that pulsed with a different kind of energy. It wasn't a name or a date, but a command, a way to interact with the book, a way to perhaps not just read it, but to alter it, to add something, or more terrifyingly, to delete something, or someone. The shadowy entity was upon him now, its cold, abyssal presence engulfing him, pressing him against the wall, stealing the air from his lungs. He could feel its tendrils, not physical but psychic, probing, searching, trying to consume his consciousness, to add his final terrified moments to its unending ledger. But Michael held on to that symbol, that single impossible command, a desperate, defiant spark against the encroaching darkness. He knew with a chilling certainty that this book was not just his doom, but perhaps his only weapon. And the next entry, he realized, might just be the one that changed everything. He knew with a chilling certainty that this book was not just his doom, but perhaps his only weapon. And the next entry, he realized, might just be the one that changed everything. His fingers, slightly trembling, turned the brittle page. The handwriting here was different, less frantic, more academic, yet beneath the precise script, Michael could sense a tremor of growing dread. It was dated almost 50 years ago. August 14, 1974. Journal entry of Dr. Eleanor Vance, Department of Urban Folklore, City University. Initial hypothesis. The recurring disappearances linked to the end-of-line subway stations are a localized urban legend, amplified by media sensationalism and psychological suggestibility. My research began with the Cumberland Line anomaly, the colloquial term for the consistent reports of disorientation, memory blanks, and eventual total disappearance of passengers who frequently rode the final stretch to the Cumberland station, the last stop on the line. I am particularly intrigued by the whispers and the sense of being watched, often cited by witnesses before a disappearance. These are classic markers of suggestibility, bordering on shared hallucination. Michael swallowed hard, his own experiences echoing in Eleanor Vance's detached observations. The whispers, the feeling of being watched. He continued reading, the words a cold river flowing into his mind. September 3, 1974. My initial dismissive stance is eroding. The sheer volume of anecdotal evidence, cross-referenced with police reports of missing persons, is statistically anomalous. What's more, the pattern is too specific. It's not just any last stop, it's Cumberland. And the common thread isn't social status or demographic, but rather, a subtle psychological vulnerability. These individuals often report a recent period of stress, loss, or intense rumination. It's as if the anomaly, if I may permit myself that term, preys on a specific emotional frequency. I've started riding the Cumberland Line myself late at night, observing. The air does feel different. A subtle hum just below the threshold of hearing. And the silence between stations, especially after the penultimate stop, is profound, unnatural. Michael felt a prickle of ice down his spine. He remembered that silence. The way the usual rumble of the subway seemed to recede, leaving only a hollow echo. October 12, 1974. I've had my first experience. After exiting at Cumberland, I felt a peculiar draining sensation, a moment of acute mental fog. My memory of the ride itself is fragmented. I distinctly recall thinking about a childhood memory, a specific moment of profound regret, just before the train pulled into the station. When I reached my apartment, I discovered nearly 2 hours had passed for which I had no recollection. My initial thought was fatigue, but the feeling of something missing from my mind is persistent. It's not just a blank. It's an absence, like a word on the tip of my tongue, forever out of reach. This is beyond mere suggestibility. There is an active force at play. Michael's breath hitched. Something missing. That was exactly how he'd felt after his own Cumberland rides. The fragmented memories, the gaps in his day. This Dr. Vance was describing his experience, decades before he was even born. November 5, 1974. The anomaly isn't merely taking people. It's absorbing them. Not physically, not in the way a predator consumes prey. It's more subtle, more insidious. I've been studying obscure texts on quantum entanglement and reality distortion. What if the Cumberland Line isn't just a physical route, but a temporal or dimensional nexus? A seam in the fabric of reality, where the boundary between here and not here is thin. The whispers are not external voices, but echoes from the other side of this seam, attempting to bridge the gap. They are attempts at communication, or perhaps attempts at extraction. Extraction. The word hung in the air, heavy and chilling. December 20th, 1974. My understanding is deepening, and with it my terror. The anomaly feeds on memory, specifically the emotional resonance of memory. It doesn't want bodies. It wants the essence of experience, the unique imprint of consciousness. The disappearances are not abductions, but a form of psychological dissolution, a gradual unraveling of identity. The individuals who vanish are not gone in the traditional sense. They are integrated. Their memories, their very being, become part of the anomaly itself. The Cumberland Station, the last stop, is the primary point of ingress because it's a place of transition, thresholds. It's where minds are often left to wander, to reflect, to remember, before re-entering the world. Michael gasped, a sound choked in his throat. This wasn't a monster in the dark. It was something far worse, something that stole the very fabric of who you were. He thought of his own recurring thoughts about his past, about his anxieties, about the faces of those who had disappeared. He had been feeding it. January 15, 1975. I've discovered a pattern in the disappearances. The anomaly seems to target individuals who are dwelling on a particular kind of memory, one of significant emotional charge, often tinged with regret, unresolved conflict, or profound longing. It's as if these memories, when intensely focused upon within the seam of the Cumberland line, create a resonance that the anomaly can lock onto. It's a lure. The whispers, they're not just echoes. They're reflections of one's own deepest, most vulnerable thoughts, amplified and distorted, drawing the victim deeper into the anomaly's grasp. The journal itself, I've been writing in it constantly a detailed record. Perhaps the act of externalizing these thoughts, of anchoring them to a physical object, creates a resistance. A memory anchor. It's a desperate theory, but it's all I have. A memory anchor. Michael looked down at the journal in his hands, then back at the frantic, elegant script. This wasn't just a diary, it was a shield. It was why he hadn't vanished entirely yet. He had been writing, documenting, trying to make sense of things. He had been creating his own memory anchors without even knowing it. February 2nd, 1975. The anomaly is growing stronger. It's not just at Cumberland now. I've felt its tendrils reaching out, even here in my apartment. The lines between my memories and external reality are blurring. I see things, hear things that aren't there. Or are they? The anomaly is becoming more sophisticated, more pervasive. It's learning. It's adapting. I believe it's trying to replicate itself, to expand its influence beyond the Cumberland line. It's seeking new seams, new points of entry into our reality, and the most terrifying realization. Once you've been touched, once it has tasted your memories, it never truly lets go. It leaves a trace of vulnerability. The subsequent disappearances of those connected to previous victims? Not coincidence. It's the anomaly tracing the threads of shared memory, expanding its network. It hunts not just individuals, but the connections between them. Michael stiffened. Connections. Emily, David, his friends. He had shared his anxieties with them. He had talked about the subway. Had he unknowingly made them vulnerable? Was the anomaly using him as a conduit to reach others? February 10th, 1975. I found it. A countermeasure. Not a weapon, not a way to destroy it, but a way to resist. To make oneself unpalatable, unassimilable. It requires a complete reorientation of self, a conscious detachment from the emotional resonance of one's past. To live entirely in the present, to refuse to dwell on regret or longing, to become a blank slate emotionally. It's a form of mental asceticism, a psychological fortifying, and crucially, to share this knowledge, to create a collective memory anchor. The anomaly thrives on isolation and individual rumination. If enough minds are aware, if enough people fortify themselves, it might be starved. My final hypothesis: the anomaly is not malicious, not evil in a sentient way. It is simply hungry, an existential void seeking to fill itself with the richness of human experience. February 12th, 1975. The whispers are constant now. I can hear them clearer than ever. They are my own thoughts, twisted, amplified. My regrets about missed opportunities, my longing for a different path. It's trying to overwhelm me, to make me dwell. But I am fighting. This journal is my anchor. This knowledge is my shield. I am leaving this here hidden, in the hope that someone else will find it. Someone else who has been touched. Someone else who can continue the fight. Remember, the present is your only true defense. Do not look back. Do not linger. And whatever you do, do not ride the Cumberland line to its last stop if you feel its pull. It is not a destination. It is a trap. And I fear, truly fear, that it is no longer just a local phenomenon. It is spreading. It is evolving. It is becoming aware. The entry ended there. The ink, though faded, seemed to vibrate with Dr. Vance's final desperate warning. Michael stared at the page, the weight of the revelation pressing down on him. Dr. Eleanor Vance hadn't just studied the anomaly. She had become its victim, or perhaps its final defiant chronicler. She had vanished, but her words remained, a beacon in the encroaching darkness. The present, his only defense. Don't look back. Don't linger. He looked around his apartment, suddenly seeing it not as a sanctuary, but as a stage for an invisible battle. The shadows seemed deeper, the silence more profound. He felt a tremor not of fear but of profound clarity. This wasn't just about him disappearing, it was about everyone. The anomaly was spreading, and it was becoming aware. A soft, almost imperceptible thump came from his window. He froze, his eyes darting towards the sound. It was subtle, like a branch hitting the glass, but there were no trees close enough to his second-story apartment. He waited, straining his ears, his heart hammering against his ribs. Nothing, just the oppressive silence. Then a faint, rhythmic scratching began, coming from his front door. Not frantic, not violent, but slow, deliberate, like fingernails dragging lightly across the wood, echoing the whispers that Dr. Vance had described. It was a sound designed to draw him out, to make him dwell on the fear. Michael gripped the journal tighter, his knuckles white. He knew with a certainty that chilled him to the bone that the anomaly wasn't just in the subway anymore. It was here, and it knew he had read the truth. He knew with a chilling certainty that this book was not just his doom, but perhaps his only weapon. And the next entry, he realized, might just be the one that changed everything. His fingers, slightly trembling, turned the brittle page. The handwriting here was different, less frantic, more academic. Yet beneath the precise script, Michael could sense a tremor of growing dread. It was dated almost 50 years ago. August 14, 1974. Journal entry of Dr. Eleanor Vance, Department of Urban Folklore, City University. Initial hypothesis: the recurring disappearances linked to the end-of-line subway stations are a localized urban legend, amplified by media sensationalism and psychological suggestibility. My research began with the Cumberland Line anomaly, the colloquial term for the consistent reports of disorientation, memory blanks, and eventual total disappearance of passengers who frequently rode the final stretch to the Cumberland station, the last stop on the line. I am particularly intrigued by the whispers and the sense of being watched, often cited by witnesses before a disappearance. These are classic markers of suggestibility, bordering on shared hallucination. Michael swallowed hard, his own experiences echoing in Eleanor Vance's detached observations. The whispers, the feeling of being watched. He continued reading, the words a cold river flowing into his mind. September 3, 1974. My initial dismissive stance is eroding. The sheer volume of anecdotal evidence, cross-referenced with police reports of missing persons, is statistically anomalous. What's more, the pattern is too specific. It's not just any last stop, it's Cumberland. And the common thread isn't social status or demographic, but rather, a subtle psychological vulnerability. These individuals often report a recent period of stress, loss, or intense rumination. It's as if the anomaly, if I may permit myself that term, preys on a specific emotional frequency. I've started riding the Cumberland Line myself late at night, observing. The air does feel different. A subtle hum just below the threshold of hearing. And the silence between stations, especially after the penultimate stop, is profound, unnatural. Michael felt a prickle of ice down his spine. He remembered that silence. The way the usual rumble of the subway seemed to recede, leaving only a hollow echo. October 12, 1974. I've had my first experience. After exiting at Cumberland, I felt a peculiar draining sensation, a moment of acute mental fog. My memory of the ride itself is fragmented. I distinctly recall thinking about a childhood memory, a specific moment of profound regret, just before the train pulled into the station. When I reached my apartment, I discovered nearly 2 hours had passed for which I had no recollection. My initial thought was fatigue, but the feeling of something missing from my mind is persistent. It's not just a blank. It's an absence, like a word on the tip of my tongue, forever out of reach. This is beyond mere suggestibility. There is an active force at play. Michael's breath hitched. Something missing. That was exactly how he'd felt after his own Cumberland rides. The fragmented memories, the gaps in his day. This Dr. Vance was describing his experience, decades before he was even born. November 5, 1974. The anomaly isn't merely taking people. It's absorbing them. Not physically, not in the way a predator consumes prey. It's more subtle, more insidious. I've been studying obscure texts on quantum entanglement and reality distortion. What if the Cumberland line isn't just a physical route, but a temporal or dimensional nexus? A seam in the fabric of reality, where the boundary between here and not here is thin. The whispers are not external voices, but echoes from the other side of this seam, attempting to bridge the gap. They are attempts at communication or perhaps attempts at extraction. Asterisk. Extraction. The word hung in the air, heavy and chilling. Asterisk December 20th, 1974. My understanding is deepening and with it my terror. The anomaly feeds on memory, specifically the emotional resonance of memory. It doesn't want bodies, it wants the essence of experience, the unique imprint of consciousness. The disappearances are not abductions, but a form of psychological dissolution, a gradual unraveling of identity. The individuals who vanish are not gone in the traditional sense. They are integrated. Their memories, their very being, become part of the anomaly itself. The Cumberland Station, the last stop, is the primary point of ingress because it's a place of transition, thresholds. It's where minds are often left to wander, to reflect, to remember, before re-entering the world. Asterisk. Michael gasped, a sound choked in his throat. This wasn't a monster in the dark. It was something far worse, something that stole the very fabric of who you were. He thought of his own recurring thoughts about his past, about his anxieties, about the faces of those who had disappeared. He had been feeding it. Asterisk January 15th, 1975. I've discovered a pattern in the disappearances. The anomaly seems to target individuals who are dwelling on a particular kind of memory, one of significant emotional charge, often tinged with regret, unresolved conflict, or profound longing. It's as if these memories, when intensely focused upon within the seam of the Cumberland line, create a resonance that the anomaly can lock onto. It's a lure. The whispers, they're not just echoes. They're reflections of one's own deepest, most vulnerable thoughts, amplified and distorted, drawing the victim deeper into the anomaly's grasp. The journal itself, I've been writing in it constantly a detailed record. Perhaps the act of externalizing these thoughts, of anchoring them to a physical object, creates a resistance. A memory anchor. It's a desperate theory, but it's all I have. Asterisk. A memory anchor. Michael looked down at the journal in his hands, then back at the frantic, elegant script. This wasn't just a diary, it was a shield. It was why he hadn't vanished entirely yet. He had been writing, documenting, trying to make sense of things. He had been creating his own memory anchors without even knowing it. Asterisk February 2nd, 1975. The anomaly is growing stronger. It's not just at Cumberland now. I felt its tendrils reaching out, even here in my apartment. The lines between my memories and external reality are blurring. I see things, hear things that aren't there. Or are they? The anomaly is becoming more sophisticated, more pervasive. It's learning. It's adapting. I believe it's trying to replicate itself, to expand its influence beyond the Cumberland line. It's seeking new seams, new points of entry into our reality, and the most terrifying realization. Once you've been touched, once it has tasted your memories, it never truly lets go. It leaves a trace of vulnerability. The subsequent disappearances of those connected to previous victims? Not coincidence. It's the anomaly tracing the threads of shared memory, expanding its network. It hunts not just individuals, but the connections between them. Asterisk. Michael stiffened. Connections. Emily, David, his friends. He had shared his anxieties with them. He had talked about the subway. Had he unknowingly made them vulnerable? Was the anomaly using him as a conduit to reach others? Asterisk February 10th, 1975. I found it. A countermeasure. Not a weapon, not a way to destroy it, but a way to resist. To make oneself unpalatable, unassimilable. It requires a complete reorientation of self. A conscious detachment from the emotional resonance of one's past. To live entirely in the present, to refuse to dwell on regret or longing. To become a blank slate emotionally. It's a form of mental asceticism, a psychological fortifying. And crucially, to share this knowledge. To create a collective memory anchor. The anomaly thrives on isolation and individual rumination. If enough minds are aware, if enough people fortify themselves, it might be starved. My final hypothesis: the anomaly is not malicious, not evil in a sentient way. It is simply hungry, an existential void seeking to fill itself with the richness of human experience. Asterisk February 12, 1975. The whispers are constant now. I can hear them clearer than ever. They are my own thoughts twisted, amplified. My regrets about missed opportunities, my longing for a different path. It's trying to overwhelm me, to make me dwell. But I am fighting. This journal is my anchor. This knowledge is my shield. I am leaving this here hidden, in the hope that someone else will find it. Someone else who has been touched. Someone else who can continue the fight. Remember, the present is your only true defense. Do not look back. Do not linger. And whatever you do, do not ride the Cumberland line to its last stop if you feel its pull. It is not a destination. It is a trap. And I fear, truly fear, that it is no longer just a local phenomenon. It is spreading. It is evolving. It is becoming aware. The entry ended there. The ink, though faded, seemed to vibrate with Dr. Vance's final desperate warning. Michael stared at the page, the weight of the revelation pressing down on him. Dr. Eleanor Vance hadn't just studied the anomaly. She had become its victim, or perhaps its final defiant chronicler. She had vanished, but her words remained, a beacon in the encroaching darkness. The present, his only defense. Don't look back. Don't linger. He looked around his apartment, suddenly seeing it not as a sanctuary, but as a stage for an invisible battle. The shadows seemed deeper, the silence more profound. He felt a tremor, not of fear but of profound clarity. This wasn't just about him disappearing. It was about everyone. The anomaly was spreading, and it was becoming aware. A soft, almost imperceptible thump came from his window. He froze, his eyes darting towards the sound. It was subtle, like a branch hitting the glass, but there were no trees close enough to his second-story apartment. He waited, straining his ears, his heart hammering against his ribs. Nothing. Just the oppressive silence. Then a faint, rhythmic scratching began, coming from his front door. Not frantic, not violent, but slow, deliberate, like fingernails dragging lightly across the wood, echoing the whispers that Dr. Vance had described. It was a sound designed to draw him out, to make him dwell on the fear. Michael gripped the journal tighter, his knuckles white. He knew with a certainty that chilled him to the bone, that the anomaly wasn't just in the subway anymore. It was here. And it knew he had read the truth. He didn't need a physical manifestation to confirm it. The air in his small apartment, usually a comforting cocoon of stale coffee and old books, had grown heavy, thick with an unseen presence. A sudden chill snaked through the room, raising goosebumps on his arms, despite the thermostat being set to a comfortable 70 degrees. It wasn't a draft. It was a cold that felt like absence, like a void sucking the warmth from the very molecules around him. His eyes darted around the living room, taking in the familiar objects that now seemed alien, subtly wrong. The shadow cast by his floor lamp in the corner seemed deeper, darker, almost moving at the periphery of his vision. He squeezed his eyes shut for a moment, then opened them, half expecting to see something monstrous. There was nothing, just the deepening shadows, the oppressive quiet that swallowed the usual hum of city life outside. A faint whisper, barely audible, seemed to brush past his ear. It wasn't a word, not a sound he could identify, but more like the rustle of dry leaves in a windless room. It was the sound of a thought, perhaps, or a memory trying to surface from the deepest parts of his own mind. He clutched the journal to his chest. Its worn leather covered the only tangible anchor in a world that was rapidly unraveling. He had to tell Jessica. She was the one who had seen it first, who had felt its pull. She had been trapped, almost consumed. He fumbled for his phone, his fingers clumsy with a sudden tremor. It lay on the coffee table, a sleek rectangle of glass and metal. He reached for it, his hand hovering just inches away. Then a faint, almost imperceptible tremor ran through the table itself. Not an earthquake, not a vibration from outside. It was as if the very atoms of the wood were shivering. The phone, still just out of reach, sparked. A tiny blue-white flash from its screen, then a fizzling sound, like static electricity discharging. The screen went utterly black. Dead. Completely, silently dead. A cold dread seeped into Michael's bones, colder than the air in the room. It wasn't just here. It was active. It was intelligent. It was cutting him off. He scrambled backward, knocking over his desk chair with a clatter that sounded deafening in the unnatural silence. His breath hitched in his throat. He had to get out. But where? And if it was here, if it could affect electronics, what else could it do? He glanced at the apartment door, then at the windows. There was no escape. Not from this. It had followed him. It had waited for him to read. The journal. He looked down at it, its pages still open to David's frantic, desperate scrawl. It feeds on attention, on fear. It wants you to dwell. The words echoed in his mind. This wasn't just a hunt. It was a psychological game. It wanted him to be terrified, to be consumed by panic. That was its fuel. That was how it grew stronger. He forced himself to breathe deep, ragged breaths that did little to calm his racing heart. Panic would only make it stronger. He had to think. He had to fight it, not with his fists but with his mind. He flipped through the journal, past David's final chilling entries, back to the earlier observations, the attempts at understanding. David had been trying to document its nature, its patterns. What had he missed? What clue had David, in his terror, overlooked? His gaze fell upon a section near the middle, written in a slightly steadier hand, before the descent into madness truly began. It was a series of bullet points, almost scientific in its attempt at detachment. Asterisk manifestation asterisk primarily sensory. Cold, sound distortion, visual anomalies, shadows, peripheral blurring. Rarely physical, but capable of affecting objects. Disruption of energy fields. Asterisk targeting asterisk individuals who acknowledge its presence. The more direct the acknowledgement, the stronger the connection. Prolonged exposure or intense focus amplifies its influence. Asterisk mechanism asterisk appears to draw energy from negative emotional states, especially fear, despair, and obsession. It creates a feedback loop. Fear strengthens it, which in turn amplifies the fear. Asterisk weakness, hypothesis lack of attention, disbelief, rationality. If it is denied its fuel, does it weaken? Can it be starved? Michael read the last bullet point again, his mind racing. Lack of attention, disbelief, rationality. It was an abstract weapon, a mental defense. How could he deny something that was actively freezing his apartment and killing his phone? But the journal also said, it wants you to dwell. That was the key. It wanted him to focus on it, to be paralyzed by its presence. If he could somehow break that focus, if he could refuse to acknowledge its power. He closed the journal, placing it carefully on the floor beside him. He couldn't let go of it, but he couldn't dwell on the terror it represented either. He needed to find a way to reestablish contact with the outside world, to warn Jessica, to find Emily. He stood up slowly, his muscles screaming with tension. The air felt colder now, almost biting. He could hear it again, that faint, dry rustle, closer this time, as if right behind his ear. He resisted the urge to spin around, to confirm its proximity. He wouldn't give it that satisfaction. He wouldn't feed it. He walked to his kitchen, his movements deliberate, his eyes fixed straight ahead. He didn't look at the deepening shadows, didn't acknowledge the feeling of intense scrutiny that prickled his skin. He opened the refrigerator, pulling out a bottle of water. His hand trembled as he twisted the cap, but he focused on the sensation of the cold plastic, the mundane act of hydration. He took a long sip, then another. The water felt like ice in his throat, but it was real, tangible. He wasn't hallucinating. This was happening. His landline. He had an old corded phone in the kitchen, a relic from a simpler time. It didn't rely on Wi-Fi or cellular signals. It was basic analog. Maybe it would work. He walked towards it, his gaze still forward, his heart hammering against his ribs. The rustling sound grew louder, accompanied by a faint, high-pitched whine that seemed to resonate inside his skull. It was trying to distract him, to break his concentration. He reached the phone, his hand extended. The receiver felt heavy, cold. He lifted it to his ear. Silence. No dial tone. Just a faint buzzing hiss like white noise, but with an underlying, almost rhythmic pulsation. It sounded like a heartbeat, distorted and monstrous. His hope plummeted, replaced by a surge of despair. It wasn't just digital devices. It was anything that connected him to the outside. It wanted him isolated, utterly, completely alone. He slammed the receiver back into its cradle. A wave of anger, hot and sharp, coursed through him, momentarily overriding the fear. It was a different kind of fuel perhaps, but it was still an emotion. He had to be careful. He looked around his apartment again, a new perspective dawning on him. It wasn't just here to scare him, it was here to trap him, to isolate him, just like it had isolated David, driving him to madness in his apartment, until he was ready to return to the subway, to its source. He remembered David's final words, scrawled in blood-red ink. "It wants me back. It needs me back." What did that mean? Why did it need them back? Michael walked back to the living room, his gaze sweeping over the books lining his shelves, the scattered papers on his desk. He needed information. He needed a weapon. Not a physical one, but something that could counter its influence. He sat back down, pulling the journal onto his lap. He didn't focus on the fear, but on the logic. What was its weakness? David had written lack of attention, disbelief, rationality. How do you rationally disbelieve something that is actively terrorizing you? How do you starve something that feeds on your very presence? He began to flip through the journal again, more methodically this time, searching for any detail, any observation that David might have made about how to fight back, not just what it was. He ignored the cold, ignored the whispers that now seemed to weave themselves into the very fabric of the air. He focused on the text, on David's frantic yet intelligent mind. He found a small, almost illegible note tucked into the margin of one page, written in a different pen, as if an afterthought or a sudden fleeting insight. It was just 3 words underlined twice. Asterisk, the echo chamber. Asterisk. Michael frowned. The echo chamber? What did that mean? Was it a place? A concept? He looked for further explanation, but there was none. The very next entry was a disjointed rant about the subway, about the faces in the windows, about the pull to return. The echo chamber. He stared at the words, a chill that had nothing to do with the anomaly seeping into his bones. He knew that term. He had heard it before, in the context of urban legends, old forgotten stories from the deepest parts of the city. It wasn't a physical place you could find on a map. It was something else entirely. Something far older, far more sinister, rumored to be a nexus point, a place where reality thinned, where thoughts could become tangible, where the city's deepest fears and forgotten energies converged. A place whispered about by those who knew the true, hidden history of the subway system. And then, another realization hit him, gut-wrenching in its clarity. The subway. The last stop. David hadn't just returned to the subway because he was drawn there. He had returned because it wanted him to. And it wasn't just any part of the subway. It was the specific, horrifying, forgotten destination that had started all of this. The echo chamber wasn't just a weakness. It was a trap. And Michael knew with a sickening certainty that he was already in it. He looked up, the air in his apartment suddenly feeling impossibly heavy, crushing him. The shadows writhed. The whispers coalesced into a low, guttural hum. He wasn't just isolated. He was being prepared. And the anomaly, in its chilling intelligence, had just shown him how it intended to finish what it started. The hum deepened, vibrating through the very bones of the train, and through Michael's own. It wasn't just a sound, it was a physical force, a resonant frequency that seemed to shake apart his perception of reality. The shadows, once merely lurking, now pulsed with an internal malevolent light, expanding and contracting as if breathing. The air grew impossibly thin, then thick, humid, and heavy with the scent of ozone and something else, something metallic and ancient, like rust and old blood. He wasn't just trapped, he was being refined. The anomaly wasn't merely a predator. It was a sculptor, an alchemist of fear, intending to transform him into its ultimate offering. The whispers, no longer indistinct, began to coalesce into fragments of thought, not his own but alien, cold, echoing the anomaly's intent. Integration, assimilation, the joining. Each word was a clawed touch on his mind, pulling him closer to an abyss far deeper than mere death. A wave of nausea washed over him, not from motion, but from the sheer psychic invasiveness. He clamped his hands over his ears, but the hum was inside him, vibrating in his teeth, his skull, his very soul. He squeezed his eyes shut, trying to block out the pulsing shadows, the flickering, sickly light that bathed the empty car in an unnatural glow. But even in the darkness behind his eyelids, he saw patterns, shifting geometries, impossible fractals, a swirling vortex of fear and despair that mirrored his own. This wasn't just about fear. It was about essence. The anomaly was draining him, siphoning off not just his terror, but his memories, his identity, the very spark of his consciousness. The preparation was a slow, agonizing process of spiritual digestion, making him palatable, digestible, for whatever monstrous purpose awaited. He was being emptied, hollowed out, to be filled with the anomaly's own grotesque will. Then a flicker, a memory shard-like and sharp, cut through the psychic static. Not of the train, but of an old, half-forgotten conversation with his grandfather, a retired transit worker years ago. Gramps had a penchant for urban legends, stories whispered among the old-timers about the subway lines. One particular tale resurfaced, chilling him to the core. It was about the very last stop on the oldest line, a place never officially documented, a rumored forgotten station, built over lost to time, where a tear in reality had supposedly occurred during its construction in the early 20th century. A place where the city's collective sorrow, its forgotten dreams, and its unspoken fears had accumulated, manifesting as something else. Gramps had called it the Echoing Maw. Michael had dismissed it as a fanciful ghost story. Now it felt like prophecy. The anomaly wasn't just on the subway. It was the subway, or at least, a cancerous growth within its forgotten arteries, feeding on the very fabric of its history and the lives it transported. The last stop wasn't just a destination. It was a portal, a point of ingress for something ancient and vast, something that had been dormant and was now waking up. The realization hit him like a physical blow. The anomaly wasn't looking for a victim to simply devour and discard. It was looking for a host. It wanted to breach the veil, to fully manifest in this reality, and it needed a conduit, something robust enough, conscious enough to serve as its gateway. He was that gateway. His fear, his isolation, his unique journey through its distorted realm. It was all part of the conditioning, the weakening of his defenses, the opening of his mind to its influence. The whispers intensified, becoming clearer now, almost like a chorus of disembodied voices, speaking in unison, yet each distinct in its malice. Join us, become us, usher in the dawn. He felt a cold tendril of something unseen brush against his mind, seeking purchase, trying to merge with his innermost thoughts. It was trying to overwrite him, to replace Michael with it. No, not yet. He wouldn't yield. A fierce primal defiance surged through him, an instinct to survive that transcended fear. He might be broken, terrified, but he was still Michael. He still had a mind, a will. And if this thing wanted to use him, it would have to fight for every inch. He forced his eyes open, scanning the impossible interior of the car. It was no longer a subway car. It was a cavern, pulsating with the anomaly's dark energy, the walls rippling like flesh, the seats dissolving into shimmering pools of shadow. But amidst the chaos, one detail remained constant, a cruel anchor to his reality. The emergency brake lever, or what looked like one. It was almost mocking in its familiarity, a stark red handle against the swirling amorphous background. He'd seen it countless times, a symbol of control, of stopping the inevitable. But what would it do here? Stop the anomaly? Or merely accelerate his own assimilation? The thought was terrifying, but a desperate thought, a Michael thought, sparked. This thing wanted him to be passive, to surrender. What if he did the opposite? What if he forced a confrontation? He pushed himself up, every muscle screaming in protest, his head pounding with the anomaly's invasive hum. The ground beneath him felt like shifting sand, the air thick and resistant. He stumbled, falling to one knee, a cold sweat plastering his hair to his forehead. The anomaly seemed to sense his defiance. The whispers turned into a cacophony of enraged shrieks, the shadows lunging at him, tangible and cold. Resist, futile surrender. He pushed past the pain, past the overwhelming dread, focusing on that single red lever. It was not just a break, it was a choice. A desperate, probably suicidal choice. But it was his choice. And if he was going to be consumed, he would go down fighting, not as a passive vessel, but as a man who chose his own ending, even if that ending was oblivion. With a guttural cry, more animal than human, he lurched forward, crawling, then stumbling towards the lever. The anomaly retaliated with full force. The pressure became unbearable, 1,000 invisible weights pressing down on him, trying to pin him to the floor. The air was ripped from his lungs, his vision blurring. He felt his consciousness fraying at the edges, his memories flickering like dying embers. He saw Emily's face, then his sister Sarah's, then his own reflection staring back at him, distorted, translucent. He was almost there. Just a few more feet. His hand, shaking uncontrollably, stretched out, reaching for the cold metal. The anomaly unleashed a final, terrifying assault, a deafening roar that ripped through the cavernous car. A sound that wasn't just noise but pure, concentrated malice. It was the sound of a universe screaming, of reality tearing itself apart. His fingers brushed against the lever, cold and unyielding. This was it. The last gamble. The last desperate act of a man cornered by the impossible. He closed his eyes, took a ragged, burning breath and pulled. The world exploded. Not with light, but with an unimaginable surge of dark energy. A scream that was 1,000 times louder than before. A raw, primal shriek of fury and agony that seemed to obliterate all other sensation. The train shuddered violently, not with the familiar rumble of metal on tracks, but with a tearing, rending sound, as if the very fabric of existence was being ripped apart. Michael was thrown backward, slamming against something hard and metallic, the impact jarring every bone in his body. His head struck the surface with a sickening thud, and for a moment everything went black. Then, through the ringing in his ears, through the haze of pain and disorientation, he heard it. A different sound. A distant, rhythmic clack clack clack. The sound of a train. A rail train. But the air was still thick with ozone, the shadows still writhed, and the metallic tang of ancient evil still clung to his tongue. He opened his eyes, blinking against a new, terrifying reality. The car was no longer a cavern. It was a subway car again, but it was inverted, upside down, its ceiling now the floor, its windows facing a swirling, impossible void. And the lever he had pulled, it wasn't just an emergency brake. It was a switch. A switch that had activated something far older, far more dangerous than he could have ever imagined. He hadn't just tried to stop the train. He had opened a new door. And the anomaly, in its furious, wounded intelligence, was now fully awakened, its true form beginning to manifest, not as whispers and shadows, but as a colossal, writhing entity that filled the impossible void outside the inverted windows, its gaze fixed on him, a silent, ancient hunger in its depths. His breath hitched, caught somewhere between a scream and a sob. The entity outside wasn't just large. It was infinite, its form defying all known physics, a swirling vortex of impossible color and absolute darkness. It writhed not like a living creature, but like a cosmic storm given malicious sentience. Tendrils not of flesh but of pure, unmade reality, pulsed and stretched from its core, brushing against the inverted windows of the train car. Each touch sent a shiver through the metal, a low, resonant hum that vibrated in David's teeth, a sound that felt less like an impact and more like the unraveling of existence itself. Its gaze, that silent ancient hunger, was not just on him, but through him into the very core of his being. He felt exposed, stripped bare, his thoughts, fears, and memories laid out for an incomprehensible intelligence to peruse. It wasn't just looking. It was measuring, assessing, preparing. The impossible silence in the train car shattered, replaced by a crescendo of sound. Not the roar of the monster, but the collective, unconscious moan of the passengers. Their dreamlike states twisted into nightmares. Faces contorted, not in fear of the entity outside, but in a deep internal agony. A woman in a business suit, who had been peacefully sketching, now thrashed in her seat, clutching her head as if trying to push something out. A young man, previously lost in a book, began to whimper, tears streaming down his face as he clawed at the air. They were reacting to the entity's presence, not consciously, but as a fundamental disturbance in their very souls. David's mind raced, a frantic search for answers, for meaning. The journal. It had to be the journal. He fumbled for the worn leather book, pulling it out, its weight a sudden anchor in the maelstrom of unreality. He flipped through the pages, past the cryptic symbols, the fragmented maps, the desperate warnings. His eyes darted across the faded script, searching for any connection, any clue to what this monstrosity was, and more terrifyingly, what it wanted. And then a new voice cut through the rising cacophony of the passengers' distress, a voice that was both familiar and utterly alien. "It has awakened," the conductor said, his voice surprisingly calm, yet imbued with an ancient sorrow. He stood at the far end of the car, framed by the impossible light of the entity outside, his uniform suddenly appearing less like a uniform and more like a shroud. His eyes, usually hidden beneath the brim of his cap, were now fully visible, glowing with a soft, internal luminescence, like embers from a long-dead fire. They held an immeasurable sadness, a burden of knowledge too vast for any single being. David spun around, clutching the journal to his chest. "What is it? What's happening?" he demanded, his voice hoarse, barely a whisper against the growing hum of the train and the groans of the passengers. The conductor took a slow, deliberate step forward, then another. "It is the hunger," he replied, his gaze fixed not on David, but on the writhing impossibility outside the window. The one that waits at the threshold. The one that feeds on what is lost, on what is forgotten, on what slips between the cracks of your reality. "The last stop," David breathed, suddenly understanding. "It's not a place, is it? It's this." The conductor nodded, his expression grim. "The last stop is where the veil thins, where the boundaries blur, where the forgotten can be harvested." These passengers, they were lost. Not just geographically, but existentially. Each one a thread unwoven from the fabric of the world, drawn here by an unseen current, a siren song of oblivion. David looked from the conductor to the suffering passengers, then back to the colossal entity. "So it takes them? Consumes them? It reclaims them," the conductor corrected, a chilling distinction. "It draws their essence, their fading echoes back into itself. It is the great recycler of the unremembered. For eons it has waited, a cosmic janitor, cleaning up the detritus of existence." "And the train?" David asked, his mind reeling. "What is this train?" "A vessel," the conductor said, a deep sigh escaping him. "A conduit. A lure. It travels the lines between, gathering those who are ready to be processed. I am merely the one who operates it, bound to its tracks, bound to its purpose." "Bound?" David questioned, a new horror dawning on him. "You're not just a conductor, are you? You're a part of this." The conductor finally met David's gaze, and in his eyes, David saw not just sorrow, but a profound weariness and ancient resignation. "I was once like you, David, a passenger, curious, unwilling to accept the mundane. I sought the truth behind the whispers, the shadows. I found it, and in doing so I became an employee, a guardian perhaps, though a failed one. My duty is to guide the lost to their final destination, to ensure the train runs on time, always." His voice cracked on the last word. "But you warned me," David said, recalling the conductor's cryptic advice. "You told me to get off, to not look out the window." "I have seen others like you," the conductor explained. "Those with a spark, a resilience, a connection to the world that refuses to be severed. They are rare. Most simply drift into oblivion, a willing offering. But you held on to something. That journal, it is a testament to that refusal." David looked down at the journal. "This belonged to Michael, the man who disappeared. He left it for me." "Why? Perhaps he too was a seeker," the conductor mused, his gaze drifting back to the entity. "Perhaps he found a way to resist, to document, to pass on a warning, a desperate hope that someone might break the cycle." Break the cycle? David felt a surge of adrenaline, a desperate hope igniting within him. "Is there a way? Can we stop it?" The entity outside pulsed, its tendrils pressing harder against the glass, causing the impossible colors to bleed into the car. The moans of the passengers intensified, becoming a unified, guttural sound, a chorus of despair. The conductor's face contorted in a brief spasm of pain, as if the entity's pressure was affecting him too. "To stop it, you must understand its nature, its weakness," the conductor said, his voice strained. "It feeds on the forgotten, yes, but it cannot touch what is remembered, what is truly cherished, what is held fast to the world. It thrives in the void between. The train itself, this vessel, it is a physical manifestation of that void, a liminal space." "The symbols," David muttered, flipping frantically through the journal. Michael drew symbols, diagrams. "What do they mean?" "They are glyphs of connection, of grounding," the conductor explained, taking another slow step closer, his eyes fixed on a page David had opened. Michael understood. The entity seeks to sever. The glyphs, they seek to bind, to pull back from the threshold. David's finger traced a complex symbol that looked like an inverted tree, its roots reaching upwards, its branches plunging into the earth. Beside it, Michael had scribbled a single word. "Anchor." "Anchor," David whispered. "What do I anchor?" "Yourself," the conductor replied, his voice gaining a sudden urgency. "And if you are strong enough, perhaps others. But the price of anchoring is to be forever bound, to remember and to be remembered, even when all else fades. It means to hold the line, to stand against the tide of oblivion." The train lurched violently, not a side-to-side sway, but a sickening drop, as if it were plummeting into an abyss. The lights flickered, casting grotesque shadows that danced with the writhing entity outside. The passengers' moans became screams, their bodies convulsing in their seats. One man, his eyes wide and vacant, began to fade, his form shimmering at the edges, dissolving like smoke. "It's feeding!" David cried, watching in horror as the man became transparent, then simply vanished, leaving an empty seat. "It is accelerating," the conductor corrected, his face now etched with despair. "It senses your resistance, your spark. It will try to consume you first. You are a disruption, a threat to its eternal harvest." The colossal entity outside pulsed with a dark, malevolent light, its impossible eyes narrowing on David. The hum intensified, becoming a deafening roar that vibrated through every bone in his body. The air grew heavy like lead, making it hard to breathe. He felt a creeping coldness not just on his skin, but deep within his soul, a sense of his own memories beginning to fray, his identity blurring at the edges. "What do I do?" David yelled, clutching the journal like a lifeline. "How do I anchor?" The conductor pointed a trembling finger at the page David held open. "That symbol. It is not just a drawing. It is a key, a focal point. You must imbue it with your strongest memory, your most cherished bond, what you refuse to let go of, and you must project it with all your will. Project it. To push back," the conductor said, his voice barely audible above the escalating chaos. "To create a countercurrent. To remind this place and the hunger that some things are not meant to be forgotten. But be warned, David. If you fail, if your will falters, you will become the most delicious meal of all. And you will be bound here forever like me, to guide the next wave of the lost." The entity surged forward, its tendrils no longer merely brushing the windows, but pressing against them, distorting the glass, threatening to breach the impossible barrier. The train groaned, its metal frame protesting, twisting under the immense unseen pressure. David felt a desperate pull, a sensation of being stretched, his essence being drawn out of him, towards the colossal maw outside. His vision blurred, the faces of his loved ones flashing before his eyes, memories flickering like dying embers. He was losing himself. He stared at the symbol, the anchor, on the page. His mind raced, searching for that one unbreakable memory, that one unyielding bond. He thought of Emily, her laughter, her warmth, their shared life. He thought of his sister, Sarah, and their childhood bond. He thought of his parents, their unwavering love. These were his anchors. These were what he refused to let go of. "It's not enough to just think it, David," the conductor screamed, his voice raw with desperation. "You must believe it. You must become it. You must sacrifice something of yourself to truly bind it." "Sacrifice? What sacrifice?" David's eyes darted across the page again, past the anchor symbol, to a smaller, almost hidden inscription that Michael had etched into the margin. It was a single cryptic sentence, barely legible, written in a hand that seemed to tremble with fear and resolve. "Asterisk, to bind the forgotten, you must offer the unforgettable. A fragment of your own existence woven into the fabric of the lost." Asterisk. A fragment of his own existence? What did that even mean? As the train screamed around him, as the entity began to crack the very glass of the inverted windows, David understood. It wasn't just about remembering, it was about giving his memory, his essence, his very connection to the world, to the symbol. It was a desperate, terrifying act of defiance. He had to become the anchor, not just find it. And the price, as the conductor had warned, would be profound. The tendrils of the entity began to pierce the impossibly thin barrier, wisps of darkness snaking into the car, searching, seeking for him. He took a breath, a shuddering gasp that felt like his last. His gaze locked onto Jessica, her face a mask of terror and uncomprehending hope. He saw the love there, the reason for everything. And in that love, he found an impossible strength. The tendrils, cold and impossibly black, were reaching for him, not with malice, but with a blind, ravenous hunger. He didn't recoil. Instead, he opened himself to them. It was an act of pure, terrifying will. He reached out, not to push them away, but to grasp them, to pull them in, to become the very thing they sought to consume. A searing cold, unlike any he had ever known, enveloped him. It wasn't the cold of ice, but the void of absolute nothingness, pressing in, threatening to erase him. He felt his consciousness fragmenting, his memories flickering like dying embers. Jessica's face, her laugh, the warmth of her hand in his. He clung to these fragments with every fiber of his being. They were his anchor, even as he prepared to become the anchor. The entity shrieked, a soundless scream that resonated in his very bones. It wasn't a scream of victory, but of confusion, then of immense, unfathomable agony. Michael was not a meal. He was a trap. He was a barrier. He was a cage. The tendrils, once seeking, now recoiled, thrashing against him, attempting to pull free. But he held them fast, drawing them deeper, pulling the very essence of the entity into the core of his being. It was a battle not of strength, but of will, of sacrifice against insatiable hunger. He felt the weight of centuries of lost souls, of forgotten dreams, of the despair that had fueled the entity, all pressing into him. His body felt as if it were being stretched across dimensions, his mind a conduit for untold suffering. Jessica screamed his name, a desperate, raw sound that pierced the swirling darkness. Emily stood frozen, eyes wide with a mixture of terror and grim understanding. The conductor, David, merely watched, his face etched with a profound sorrow that seemed to span epochs. He had seen this before. He had known this was coming. Michael's vision blurred. The subway car, the familiar seats, the grimy windows, all began to warp and distort. The walls pulsed with an inner light, a shimmering ethereal energy that fought against the encroaching darkness. He was becoming one with the train, with the space between spaces, with the very fabric of this impossible reality. He felt a connection to the tracks, to the endless journey, to every soul that had ever been lost or saved within this impossible transit system. He was no longer just Michael, the man who had boarded the wrong train. He was Michael, the guardian, the keeper of the line, the living anchor that would prevent the entity from ever breaching the veil again. The process was excruciating, yet strangely liberating. As the last vestiges of the entity's tendrils were absorbed into him, he felt a profound sense of calm descend. The void was still there, a chilling presence within him, but it was contained, bound by his will, by his love, by his sacrifice. The shimmering light intensified, washing over the entire subway car. The oppressive cold began to recede, replaced by a strange, neutral warmth. The oppressive silence that had been the entity's signature was broken by the faint, distant hum of a city, the sound of life. Then there was a lurch, a familiar jarring sensation. The train gave a final, shuddering groan, and the otherworldly glow faded. When the light fully dissipated, Michael was gone. Jessica stood alone in the center of the subway car, tears streaming down her face. Her hands were outstretched, reaching for an empty space. Her husband, her Michael, had vanished. Emily stumbled forward, her face pale, her gaze fixed on the spot where Michael had stood. "He did it," she whispered, her voice hoarse with emotion. "He became the anchor. He sealed it." David approached Jessica, his movements slow and deliberate. He placed a gentle, almost spectral hand on her shoulder. "He saved you, Jessica. He saved us all. And he will continue to save us, for as long as this line runs." Jessica looked up at him, her eyes filled with a grief so profound it seemed to anchor her to the very spot. "He's gone." "His physical form," David clarified, his voice soft. "But his essence, it lives on. He is the heart of this line now, the guardian, the protector." He gestured vaguely around the car. "He will ensure that no one else ever suffers the same fate. He will ensure that the entity remains bound." As David spoke, the subway car around them began to solidify, to regain its normal appearance. The grime on the windows, the worn seats, the flickering fluorescent lights. It was all suddenly mundane, familiar. Too familiar. It was the same subway car, but it felt different. Felt safe. A soft chime echoed through the car, signaling an announcement. A voice, clear and strong, yet imbued with an underlying timeless sorrow, spoke from the intercom. It was Michael's voice. "Next stop, Grand Central Terminal. All passengers for the surface world, please exit carefully." Jessica gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. It was him. It was his voice. But it was distant, echoing like a memory whispered on the wind. It was the voice of the conductor. Her Michael, now the conductor of the impossible line. The doors hissed open, revealing a brightly lit platform. Not the spectral, deserted platform of the last stop, but a bustling, vibrant station. People were moving, talking, laughing. The sounds of a normal city afternoon flooded the car. David gently guided Jessica towards the open doors. "You are free, Jessica. Go. Live your life." He would want that. Jessica hesitated, looking back at the empty space where Michael had been. She wanted to run, to scream, to demand he come back. But she knew with a certainty that chilled her to the bone that he couldn't. He had made his choice. He had paid the profound price. Emily placed a hand on Jessica's arm. "He will always be with you, Jessica. In every quiet moment, in every unexpected flicker of light. He's safe. He's at peace. He found his purpose." With a heavy heart and a soul torn between profound grief and an overwhelming sense of gratitude, Jessica stepped out onto the platform. The sounds, the smells, the vibrant energy of the city assaulted her senses. It was real. She was back. She turned to look back at the subway car. David stood inside, a solemn figure. Emily gave her a small, knowing smile. And then just before the doors hissed shut, Jessica thought she saw it. A fleeting shadow, a subtle shimmer in the conductor's booth. A presence that was undeniably Michael. A silent farewell, a promise kept. The train pulled away, its familiar rumble fading into the distance, carrying its new conductor, its new anchor, into the endless labyrinth of the impossible. Jessica stood on the platform, amidst the hurried commuters, a solitary figure in a world that had suddenly become both vibrant and profoundly empty. She was free. She was safe. But her heart carried the weight of a sacrifice so immense, so selfless, that it would forever define her. She had come to the last stop on the subway line, and she had returned, but not without leaving a piece of her soul behind, forever bound to the man who became the guardian of the impossible. The world had returned to normal, but for Jessica, normal would never be the same. Every subway ride, every distant rumble beneath the city streets, would be a whisper from the man who had given everything to save her. He was gone, but he was everywhere. He was the anchor. And the line, the impossible spectral subway line, would run forever, protected by the love and sacrifice of Michael, the conductor of the last stop. And sometimes, late at night, when the city was quiet and the trains were mostly empty, a new passenger might step onto an unfamiliar platform, waiting for a train that wasn't on any map, looking for a way home. And a kind voice filled with a gentle, timeless sorrow would announce the next stop, guiding them through the darkness forever.